Over the Christmas break, a South Florida legend, Neil Rogers, passed away. And Neil Rogers is probably, and I was thinking about this after I read about it, but even that type of format where you have a radio guy who stays in one market for decades at a time, and everybody in that market knows him, everybody in that market would tune him in, whether they loved or hated the guy. That kind of thing is disappearing. And one of the reasons why I even brought that up is here in New York City, there was a blizzard. And Manhattan got cleared out pretty quick, but the other boroughs didn't. It's actually not a gigantic news story. It isn't the type of thing that would make CBS News, wouldn't even make the Ron and Fez show. It's not a news story that I would sit up and talk about. But the weird thing was, everybody in the streets of New York were talking about this, but you no longer had that radio guy who would sit, scream on the air about it, call up the mayor's office, call the mayor out. If you remember, at one time, every market, every city that you would go in America would at least have one local radio guy who would be pissed off at the mayor and would listen to the people's gripes about what it was like to live in any certain town. And that's all kind of gone. And Neil Rogers in Florida over 30 years in that one market was probably a bigger star than David Letterman was in that market. He was probably a bigger star than Jay Leno, Oprah, you name people that are considered, big media stars. In that one market, he was bigger because he was talking about stuff that people in that market could relate to. And I met Neil back in the 90s after he had already been a star for a long time. I went to work there at, what was it, WIOD, Fez? WIOD. And he was already a legend in that town. And I had heard him, when I was living in Tampa, they put his show on in Tampa for a little while, and it kind of didn't have the same pop. If you couldn't been part of that market, you wouldn't have known the kind of stroke that he had there. But once I moved to Miami, and heard how many times that people thought it was just cool that I was working at the same radio station with him. I mean, it was a very weird thing. And these people had been ingrained in his show for like decades. And there was no way I was ever going to catch up and feel the same way about him as the people who worked there. But what was really fun about Neil is that his personality off the air was completely different than his personality on the air. And I found that's true with a lot of those kind of bully radio hosts, the kind of radio hosts that's laying into people and liking to have fights going on. Off the air, they're not like that at all. And he was a very soft-spoken guy off the air, very sweet guy off the air, very kind of helpful guy off the air. But then when he would get on the air, he would turn around and be completely different, And I remember one day they wanted to put, there's some talk about putting Sonny Fox with me, and Sonny does a show over on Sirius now, on one of the comedy channels. And I saw Neil in the hall, and he was like, yeah, Sonny Fox would be perfect for you. He's, he'll be the anchor, and you can get in the funny stuff. And he had all these opinions about it. And then he walked down the hall, got on the air, and went, Sonny Fox is hanging around here, trying to snoop in the Bennington show. He's a piece of garbage, this guy, Last thing we need is Sonny Fox in here. And I remember I'm driving on, and I'm thinking, I wonder which opinion is real. There's no reason to think, since one guy is like really soft and sweet, maybe that's the real guy. That's just kind of what you want to believe. But maybe, in some kind of Clark Kent Superman way, which one is he? But he just had Miami just by the balls, ratings-wise, talk-wise, for three decades. And we're just never going to have that kind of radio again. It's everybody now, the second they break into radio, they want to be national. They want to talk about national things. But the weird thing is, you could talk about Obama and this and that, and nothing would have mattered to the people in this area as much as the snow pickup the other day. That's the stuff that actually affects your life. That's the stuff that people think about on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. And he was able to find those things. He was able to grab those things. The other really interesting thing is about Neil is that he came out as gay in like 1976 when you didn't say such things. And the reason why apparently that he did it is Anita Bryant had been doing this anti-gay thing in Florida, and he just goes on his show and says, I'm gay. And never, the weirdest thing about him was like, that wasn't like his shtick. It was just who he was. Like, he didn't even do a lot of gay topics or why people should treat gays or there should be gay. He was just like, fuck it. People are people. Whatever you happen to be, that's who you are. You shouldn't spend a lot of time screwing around about it. And people completely gave him a pass on it and just accepted him because he accepted himself. He was comfortable with himself. So his listeners, and trust me, his listeners were a lot of young, white, straight guys in the 70s, 80s, and 90s who didn't accept the gay, were, maybe even gay bashers, but they completely accepted him because they had to if they wanted to listen to his show. It was a really, really kind of complicated, complex guy, and it always made for interesting radio. And I've always found that the most interesting radio talk shows hosts always have some kind of complexity to them. In terms of Neil, in particular, he hated bullies. Yeah, he was a bully. He hated hypocrites. But yeah, I just explained enough about he's one way off the air, one way on the air. I guess he was a hypocrite. Needed excitement, yet lived a very small, quiet life off the air. Very complex guy, very interesting guy. And the people of Miami will not have another Neil Rogers. And I kind of find it sad that, to me, that's the thing that we're lacking right now, is that guy who is local. The fact that if you turn on your TV, all of these people are screaming about national news things that really have very little to do with your life. Even in terms of ESPN, when you watch ESPN, those people aren't attached to any certain team. They're not living and dying with their team. They're doing a job, What was great about that Chad Dukes thing is that we played not too long ago is because he's from Washington. He loved the Redskins. So that kind of stuff was like a stake in his heart. But if you watch ESPN, they don't feel that way. If you watch Fox News, they don't feel that way. They're not. It's just entertainment to them. Here's John in Miami. John, you're on the Ron and Fez show.
Ronnie. Yeah, I was a huge fan of Neil Rogers. And the thing about him, he was so insightful, so quick-witted, so well-read and intelligent, and a guy that could have led anything, but he never wanted to be a leader. He could have gone on the national scene, and I think he would have been second to nobody.
You can never tell. I think what he did by just staying in one market and knowing that market 100% in so many ways was way more interesting than if he would have had done a national show. Because trust me, when you do a national show, you end up compromising.
I would agree with it. Just that he had so much to offer. I was always saddened by the fact that he didn't catch on, that he didn't go on to an XM where he could really explode and not worry about the sponsors, of what he might say. Because he could just talk about anything, and he could just tear anyone a new one.
Yeah, he would. He would completely rip. And for the people who don't know, I mean, if there was anybody in that town of Miami with any stroke at all, whether they were big newscaster, political people, newspaper people, when he was pissed at those people were nervous wreck.
Oh, yeah.
They were a nervous wreck not to have this old queen back them 100%. And I mean, the stuff that he would go after him for, some of it was, like I say, some of it was just ball busting. You know, to him it was just a show, but at the same time there wasn't anything more important than doing that show, you know?
Right, and you're so right about him being contradictory. It's like, I mean, hockey was his number one sport, and then when Wayne Huizenga was getting tax money to build the new arena, he just ripped Huizenga a new one to no end. You know,
yeah, he would go after the biggest people, and you know that's the thing about is it the complexity of that. I can't think of any corporation that he didn't hate that he worked for. Every company, he would just impale the executives, just impale them. Sometimes unfairly, sometimes fairly, but he always had to have that battle going on. But what was really, really weird was to go to that market when you didn't grow up there or whatever. And I remember I had done something on my show because he would always have this Neil God things that he would play drops constantly. So I did it as a joke. So he took my voice, put it on there. My neighbors were like amazed, like, holy shit, I can't believe you're a drop on Neil Rogers' show. And I'm like, I got my own fucking show in the morning. I'm not all this upset. They love that guy in Miami. They loved him. And like I said, he had been big for 25 years. For 25 years before I had met him, probably. He'd been down there for decades. And that kind of stuff is lost in this country. And it's very weird, even like when I see people doing podcasts now. I can't believe that they're completely going into national general interest type stuff. Pick something small and know it better than anyone else.
So is Rogers like a political guy, or?
He started that way.
Political talk?
And then it started as, he was doing issue stuff. And then at a certain point, he just started to do it about himself and what was ever in the hallway. And that's what the weird thing, like if you didn't have this whole thing of it and you just heard it for the first time, you're like, what the hell is this show about? Because you didn't have the full background. You didn't realize that he was doing that stuff just because he wanted to do it that way. There became a time where people stopped liking issue-related stuff and more were like, just give me, some shock stuff, just anything to get out of it right now.
What happened on Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah, I don't even think he went for much stuff like that. It was more like who he was pissed off in the building. And I mean, he would spend hours fucking wrecking people. Tony, you're on Fez.
Yeah, Ronnie, you're right. If Pepper Hicks came out that he was gay, I'd still listen to your show.
Well, again, if a person is comfortable with themselves and we're like, I'm okay with it no matter what anybody else thinks. That's how all this thing is. Like, you can have like comic book geeks, let's say, and then other people who will fucking read comic books and are cool about it. It doesn't really matter what you do or what you're into. It's more about the way you feel about it. If you're okay with it, people generally will be okay with stuff. James, you're on Fez.
Hey, guys. He just died a couple years ago. His name was Eddie Schwartz. He was just kind of like your Neil Rogers, but this guy ruled the midnight shift in Chicago here for God knows how long, like you said, decades. And he was like every firefighter's, policeman's, every third shift guy's like best buddy on the air. In fact, he actually saved a woman where he was broadcasting from, there was a fire at the building. The woman was trying to call. She couldn't get the numbers right, or her address right. And he goes, hey, that's the, I forgot the name of the building. He goes, hey, that's that building. And then the firefighter's like, oh, okay. They went over there and he saved a woman. I mean, just because he knew who she was, or
right.
he knew where it was. And he was just like this guy. He knew about anything and everything about the whole city. And the midnight shift is where he ruled. And then everybody who was like up early in the morning, just getting home from work or whatever like that, they're like, hey, Eddie, brought this up and all that. So you just said a couple years ago, you're right. It is a dying breed of radio guys that know local scenes pretty well.
It really is a lost thing. And then that guy would say, hey, I'm going here to breakfast. People would meet him. I mean, we used to do stuff when we did local radio where you would just say, hey, let's all show up at this one place, fucking do something after work. And you have a ball doing that. And you kind of give that up when you're a national show. And it's the same way in, TV. It's not like, I mean, after a certain point, how much can you relate to Letterman anymore? He's living a completely different life than the people who watch his show. But when you live in that area, you talk about the things that matter to people in those areas. And, there was even some talk when I first started at Sirius, is that maybe we'll have one day a New York talk station, a Chicago talk station, an LA talk station. But who knows how long any of those things will take place. But it's amazing how many things that take place on my block that the people on my block talk about all the time, but there's no radio station to talk about that stuff with anymore. And if I brought it into here, I probably would bore the shit out of you guys. It would be the dullest thing in the world. Mike, you're on the Run of Fez show.
Hey, what's up, buddies?
Yeah.
I want to wish you guys a Happy New Year's, by the way. But I want to say I think you're absolutely right. I think this whole gay rights movement is just going to end up just like the civil rights movement. And 50 years from now, people are going to look back and go, why weren't gays allowed to get married? Why weren't they allowed to serve in the military or get any of the same benefits that anybody else does?
You know what's really funny about that, too, is it does take time. So it just...
No, it does. It's a social movement,
Yeah.
Over time, people become more accepting, and you get the issues kind of dissolve,
Well, really, it becomes, I think in terms of gay rights, you're more likely to understand it as soon as you have someone in your family who's gay. When you don't, just like the same thing with racism. You can take the biggest racist guy in America. He'll get a black grandkid and he'll end up loving that fucking kid. And it'll change anything. And then he'll be like, you know what? Black people need more rights. That's literally how it all comes about. Chris, you're on Run of Fez. Chris.
Oh, hey, Ronnie. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, you remember Pierre Robert in Philly? He's been around for 100 years.
Yeah, Pierre Robert is the first guy I think I heard playing the Arlo thing on Thanksgiving.
He's been around forever. He was in the Mummers Trade last weekend. Come on. It doesn't get any bigger than that.
There really is a lot to be said for that. It really is a lot to be said for when you are just the king of your little town. You can't beat it. Here's our old buddy Tom. Tom, what do you say, pal?
Hey, Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah.
One thing that's turned me off to terrestrial radio so much, when you used to be able to get informed by the local guy on your way to work or something in the morning, is now the local guy is defined by the conservative label or the liberal label, and then they'll expound on whichever side that is, completely disregarding what the other points may be, and it takes the validity out of what they say because they're so goddamn close-minded that it tips you away from listening to the information. And
a lot of that has to do because even if you do have a local guy now, he has to fit in with whatever the national acts are going to be around him. So you're very rare to have somebody who doesn't fit into the Hannity, Rush Limbaugh thing. And quite frankly, it's a way to get popular in radio. It's a way to keep your ratings. If there's already format set up, it's easier and for advertising and for ratings just to go along with that format. So a lot of those guys just go along and they use the same catchphrases is because it's, you know, it's the way to get paid. Mike, you're on the Ron and Fez show.
Hey, Ron, I had a friend a few years ago that hated everything black. He hated black ball players, politicians, etc. But his daughter got knocked up by a black guy. I went by there about a couple years ago, and he has an Obama sign in his front yard. It's gone completely the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and that is... sometimes it's the only way people will fucking learn about anything. It's the only way that they'll grow is by being exposed to it, you know? It's not going to come to them any different way. I'm going to go over here to Lou in South Dakota. Lou, you're on the Ron and Fez show.
Hey, what's going on, Ronnie?
Yeah.
Listen, I used to work for Coach Hour. I know you got two radio shows, but when I worked for one, the lady that did our morning show in Syracuse, New York, would also do the morning show at the same time in New Orleans. So you're lucky if your local DJ is even local to your market.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that they generally do with the music stuff now, right?
Yeah, most definitely. There's no reason to have someone individual to each market when you can have them do 2 or 3 shows in the same hour. You're still paying them for the hour, and you're getting more work out of them.
Well, you know, there is... The weird thing about that is the fact when they let the programmers take away the music shows from the guys playing music. Because when that happened, the guys stopped caring about the music at all. And it used to be at one time on FM radio, where a guy would come in to a fucking radio station with his music from home, you know?
What?
He would have fucking albums, and he'd be like, here's a band I fucking love, blah, blah, blah. And you would listen to that guy's show, and he was totally connected to his music. But by the time they started programming the music, and then it was just guys with good voices going, yeah, that sticks. And you're listening to The River. Whatever. It's a matter of time before you're killing the fucking product. Absolutely killing the product. And they've done that. Now, here at Sirius, you've got guys that they've hired to play their own fucking music. And to me, those are the best fucking music shows that we have on here. You might not be hearing the hits. Sometimes I'll go out and smoke and listen to the Jersey Rock station on terrestrial radio here. And I kid you not, they go into Pearl Jam, they go into Nirvana, and then every fucking night I hear the same Cake song. They play one new song, I'm Sick of You by fucking Cake, and it fucking plays every night. And I'm like, do they not get the fact that people might be doing this? All right, maybe it's not a Jersey station. Maybe it's 101.9. I'm trying to look it up, whichever one I'm listening to. Every night, same fucking Cake song. And I know that, and it takes place over the course of one cigar. Mike, you're on Ron and Fez.
Yeah, terrestrial radio now, even the weather and the traffic people, they're not even local anymore. Half the time they're talking about traffic, and they have no idea what roads they're talking about.
It is really funny when you hear people who don't know how to pronounce the names of the places where the people live. And it's because it's about hiring professionals, bringing a professional into our town. You'd be so much better off with somebody from that fucking town. And the same thing that goes with your sports. Do you want somebody who cares about the same thing that the people who go to the games care about? But now, oh, geez, you have to know the whole league and how it's to become about this and that. We've done away. We've lost something. Gorilla Bob writes in New York, we had Bob Grant forever. Yeah, Bob Grant was definitely one of those guys in New York that people from New York knew for decades. Let's go over here to Dave, Long Island. You're on Fez.
Hey, what's going on, Ron?
Yeah. What do you got?
Hello?
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Oh, no, I was just calling in. I snowplow, and when I snowplow, you do like 56 hours straight. So you listen to the radio like nonstop, and it's the same fucking songs on every station for 2 hours. You switch to one station, and the song they're playing on one station is playing on the next station in like 5 minutes.
And the only people to fucking blame are the listeners. If the listeners would say, we want something different, we want something fucking better, they would provide it to you. But they got into a thing where the listeners just got like, well, every time I get into a show, I get in my car, I want to hear a hit. Look what you got for yourself now. Look what you fucking have for yourself. The latest cake hit. Now, I'm sure this song is a hit and means something to certain people, but they have a whole album out. You don't have to play the same Cake song every night while I'm smoking. The weirdest fucking thing is what we let radio become. Joe, you're on the Run and Fez show.
Yo, buddies.
Yeah.
I still remember the first day that I found you guys and O&A on NEW because I was listening to the classic rock station and I couldn't fucking take listening to Procol Harum one more goddamn time.
Well, the weirdest thing about it is there's no reason that you can't mix that same format with classic rock. Eddie Trunk does it with his metal show where he sits down, plays the songs that he wants to play, explains to you what's going on there. You're going to hear new music. You're going to hear old music. You're going to find out who played on different things. And radio could absolutely be that way. But then, you got into certain people who are just like, just play me the hits and shut up. Well, that's why your fucking radio blows now. And then everyone tells you, a radio blows. Well, maybe because you're trying to reach the unfucking passionate. This is what you get when you lower your fucking standards so your show is for fucking everybody. Fuck everybody. Everybody eats shit. You don't want to fucking appeal to those people. Have a fucking radio show where you fucking play music for the people that you think would like it. Stop trying to have something where, well, this station's great. Grandmothers listen, little children listen, adults listen. That's why it fucking blows. That's why it's fucking repetitious. Because you have no passion of your own that you can then set out through the speakers. And you're letting fucking cheap-suited programmers look at numbers and come up with stuff that they hope people are all going to like the same stuff in Kansas as they like in fucking Oklahoma, as they like in Miami, New York, Philadelphia. It's crazy. It's insane. Here's Michelle. You're on Run of Fez.
Well, snappy New Year's to you, gentlemen. In D.C., we had one of those stations you were talking about. It was called WHFS.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, people still mourn that radio station. When you interviewed Bonnie Raitt, she brought that station up. I swear to God, I cried. The memories came flooding back.
But you know that station itself even became cookie cutter before they did away with it, you know?
Oh, it certainly did. But the good news is that the man that owned that station bought another station outside of Annapolis, WRNR, some of the same DJs, and they still are cranking with the bringing in the albums from home. You know, every time when I'm it's only 5,000 watts, but when I'm in range, that station is on. Forget XM. I'm listening to WRNR.
All right, thank you, darling. Here's Sean. Sean, you're on Run of Fez.
Hey, Ronnie, be my friend. It's like Buck 380. I don't know if you remember about a month ago when they were playing that Miley Cyrus video about her getting high. In the background, they went from one song of Bush to the very next song, the Eagles. Now, that was kind of out there, but it worked. And, you know, these program station people nowadays would never fucking allow something like that. It either always has to be all grunge or all classic. You know, they would never mix things up.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And then again, it's because they don't trust the guy that they put on the air. That they should say, I'm putting the guy on the air and letting him play the music that he thinks will reach his audience. And again, I will also go back and blame the audience. For the same reason that the masses out there watch shit at the movies, watch shit on fucking TV. Doesn't mean that the rest of you have to, though. There are still good movies to go see, good TV, good books to read. They're just not going to be number one. And the fucking thing, when we all started to sit around and bring up every Monday, well, who won the weekend? Who had the number one movie of the week? Who gives a fuck? I don't give a shit if a bunch of little kids went to go see some talking mouse movie. Why does that mean I got to go see it? It should be for little kids. We've lost passion. We've lost that fucking ability to say. And at the same time, you, the listener, has to have passion as well. You have to be able to say to yourself, I'm going to fucking find the shit that's fucking cool to listen to. We'll take a break here. Run a Fest show after the jump.